Okay, let's go ahead and get started. If I may, before I call the meeting to order, I want to announce that some committee member, staff, and the public are attending remotely via Zoom as well as on site. All participants joining by phone should mute their phones when not speaking to avoid background noise. When speaking, please speak directly into a microphone to ensure everyone listening is able to hear your comments and to ensure a clear record is made. During the meeting, please make sure that you announce yourself by name and title every time you speak, so the public that is observing knows who is speaking. This is critical given the number of remote participants and is current guidance from the Kansas Attorney General. The public is allowed to participate by Zoom or submit comments by email prior to the meeting, and those comments will be included in the record of this meeting. The public may also indicate their intent to provide remote public comment by contacting the clerk's office by 5 p.m. the Thursday before the meeting. The public also will have an opportunity to provide brief comments either by telephone or via Zoom from the 5th floor conference room of the municipal office building. I will now call the meeting of the Economic Development Finance Standing Committee to order. I would ask the clerk to please call roll.
Roll call. Haley, Davis,
Here.
Townsend, Stites, McKiernan,
Here.
Burrows.
Here. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Were there any revisions to tonight's agenda?
Yes, Commissioner, we have one addition to the committee agenda. We have added a new item number 6, which is the community, get the correct title, Community Benefits Fund.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I appreciate that. Next order of business would be the approval of minutes, but there are no minutes to approve this month. And I do want to welcome our fellow colleague, Mr. Harold Johnson, Commissioner Johnson, to the panel. And I also want to recognize Mr. Haley from the BPU board this evening. Thanks for joining us. Okay, committee, we have 5 action items tonight and 1 for information only. So if we get started, item number 1 is an ordinance terminating the Plaza Speedway TIF district. And I will call on Debbie Johnson to over the information. Debbie?
Good evening, Commissioners. Debbie Johnson, Interim Chief Financial Officer. So this first item is a bit of good news. We are terminating the Plaza at the Speedway TIF district. There were bonds issued on this project and they have paid off about 3.5 years early. So I've got a short presentation just to kind of talk a little bit about the project. So for the development, it was a 92-acre redevelopment with 865,000 square feet of retail space, as well as some public infrastructure regarding the widening of Parallel Parkway. There were some storm and sanitary sewer lines, some gas and electric utility work, as well as some of the some work on the commercial and residential zones. So this next slide just gives some information on the district itself. The district was created in 2006. The pledges were property tax increment and sales tax increment, and the financing was a special obligation bond. Over on the left-hand corner there, we've listed out the stores that are in the development district, and then there is also a map that shows the district. Just a little bit about the bonds. The bonds were in the principal amount of $33.5 million. I don't have that on this slide, but and the principal and interest amount was $44.5 million. Did just want to note it was a Series 2013 issue, and let's see. The property taxes that were pledged, each parcel that was in the district on the property tax pledged their property tax revenues for 10 years. So once a parcel had paid in for 10 years, then it was removed from the district and its payments went on the property tax rolls. And then we also had sales tax pledged. The term bond structure, there were mandatory redemptions in September. And then in November, they would take a look at for any advanced redemptions. 50% of the excess revenue went to those advanced redemptions, and then the other 50% went to the unified government. Payoff was originally scheduled for March of 2027, but the actual maturity was September of 2023. And just want to note that the additional property taxes that we'll be receiving are about 1.37 million, and the additional sales tax is about 2 million. These next couple slides just show some impacts to the city, the county, and the other districts. I probably won't go through all of the information on here, but maybe just to note that the impacts to the city were 93.5% of the city pledged sales and use tax, which included the 1% city's tax, the city's portion of the county's 1%, and then the EMS 0.25%. And I'd already talked about there were 10 years of incremental property tax pledged on the development. So this just shows kind of what we were receiving prior to the payoff and then what we were receiving after the payoff for both the sales and use tax as well as the property. So I'm just going to skip to the bottom line here. So for prior to the bond payoff, we were getting excess revenues of about 2.9 million. Now we will get excess revenues of about 5.5 million on the city side. Impacts on the county side. The county's portion of the county 1% was pledged to this project. And I'll just note that on the county side, the property tax is split up between all of the cities within the county, as well as the county gets a small portion of the taxes. So it was only the portion of the county that the county was receiving of the county property tax. None of the city portions on the county were pledged. So this just shows prior to the payoff on the county, they were getting about excess revenues of about $500,000, and now they'll get about 0.8 million. And this next one is just impacts to the other entities. We kind of listed out all the entities that were listed here. The cities, the other cities, since they did not have a city tax pledge, there's no impact to them, as well as the state, their 1.5 mils was not pledged. I did, as we were reviewing this afternoon, I did notice I have an error on USD 203. We show the unpledged 20 mils. So there's no impact to that, but there was an impact on the remaining mills. And I think we calculated that they should receive about approximately 235,000 of additional revenue after the payoff. And then you can see the community college is going to get about 230,000, and then the library 64,000. So for total, after the bond payoff, the impact to the other entities is about 1.1 million. So my final slide is we're requesting commission action to approve the ordinance to terminate the plaza at the Speedway TIF.
So if I may, Debbie, total, we're going to receive city and county combined about $3 million additional revenue.
I think so. Was that the
county and the city?
Yeah, 2.6 on the city and well, about 236,000 on the county. So 2.6 million, yeah, almost 3 million, right?
Okay, that's good news. Anytime a bond pays off early, it tells us that things are working well. Project performed like it should. Okay, any committee, any questions? Okay, I'll ask the clerk, are there any questions received from the public?
No comments were received.
I'll recognize any member of the public who wish to address the committee. I'll ask the clerk if there are any hands raised.
No hands are raised online.
Is there anyone in the audience who would care to speak to this? Let the record show nobody. Oh. Okay.
Go ahead and go to the
If
podium.
there's anyone in the audience wishes to speak, you will be given up to 3 minutes to make your comments. Please come to the podium, state your name and the city and residence of record. You have 3 minutes.
Need to turn the mic on, please.
Hi, Ms. Debbie, I just wanted to ask a question or so to make sure I'm comprehending this correctly, because I walked in as you were testifying. the community benefits,
City of Redmond.
Kansas City, Kansas, and my name is Lisa Yeager. Okay, I just wanted to make sure the new community benefits funds for monies to receive as fees paid by the developers who are receiving.
We're not on that. We're on a different part of the agenda. We will get to that later on in the agenda.
Okay, so I'm looking at it wrong because I thought we were on number
Yes,
6.
that's the very last item on the agenda. We're on item number 1.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just seen that it was going for the tax part. Okay. Terminating the plaza. Okay, I have no objections to that.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry, sir.
That's all right. All right. Anyone else care to speak? The issue? Okay, let the record show no one come forward. I would now entertain a motion for approval of this item. It is an action item.
McKiernan, move to approve as submitted.
Davis, second. Have a motion and a second. Clerk, please call roll.
Roll call. Haley, Davis,
Aye.
Stites, McKiernan,
Aye.
Burrows.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, committee. Item number 2 is an action item. This is the approval of an ordinance authorizing issuance of industrial revenue bonds in a principal amount not to exceed $633,537 for an industrial facility located at 1700 Kansas Avenue on behalf of Ecovist Catalyst Technologies LLC. There is a request to fast track this item to the December 7th commission meeting, and I'll now recognize Jeff Conway from our legal department for remarks.
Commissioner, I can go ahead and take this one.
Okay? please,
Um,
Debbie.
Debbie Johnsher, Interim Chief Financial Officer. This is for the issuance of industrial revenue bonds. I have with me Lisa Russell from Gilmore and Bell. She's going to start off the discussion, and then I'm not sure if the developer is here. If you want to come forward, you could also come forward.
Sure. I'm Lisa Russell with Gilmore and Bell, bond counsel to the unified government. I know you're more used to seeing Kevin Wimpy, but his wife had a baby yesterday. So I'm pinch hitting for him today. This item relates to a request by Ecovist Catalyst Technologies for the issuance of $633,537 of taxable industrial revenue bonds. Ecovist has a manufacturing facility located at 1700 Kansas Avenue. That's the corner of 18th Street and Kansas Avenue. Just to give a little bit of an overview, the first bond issuance for their benefit was in 1995. As you can see on the slide, there had been numerous other bond issues since then, typically annually. The last resolution of intent, most recent, was done in 2019 for $100 million. And that was intended to be for bond issues over a number of years, including this one that we're considering today. We'd be at about 48 million of that $100 issued. And then there are future plans for significant expansion, which I'll let the applicant speak to in a moment. The action item today, we're asking the commission to consider an ordinance approving the IRBs, again, in the amount of $633,537. This will provide sales tax exemption on construction materials and property tax abatement. As you're used to seeing on IRBs, the abatement for this project is 75%. Pursuant to the performance agreement that would be approved by the ordinance. As with most IRBs you see, the applicant is responsible for debt service payments and will also buy their own bonds. So this is not a public bond issue, and there is no liability for the UG, no impact on the UG's credit or credit ratings. This is requested to fast track to the December 7th commission meeting to facilitate closing the bonds yet here in 2023. I'm happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, representative of the company is here to give you a little bit more information about the project.
Hi, my name is Dave Nadir. I'm with Ecovist. I'm one of the engineering leads there working on these expansion projects. Basically came here to answer any questions you guys might have, to be honest with you. Nothing prepared.
Thank you. Please stand by.
Sure.
Any questions? Commissioner McKiernan.
Thank you. I just want to, I'm not going to ask you any questions. I just want to thank you and your company for decades of improvement of that facility, increased numbers of employees on that site. Regardless of any abatements that have been in place or are currently in place, you're paying more in taxes now than that site used to pay. You've been a great community partner. I am really pleased to have your company in the district. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll pass that along.
Yeah, I echo those comments. It's nice to see the growth of the company and the quality of work that's been done down there. It's just a nice partnership. We appreciate your presence. Thank you. I'll ask at this time if there's any member of the public who wish to address the committee on this issue. Being none, I'll ask, are there any residents present that would care to speak to this? Anybody online?
No hands are raised.
Anybody in the audience wish to speak to this issue? Show no one step forward. I would entertain motion.
McKiernan, move to approve as submitted.
Yes. Have a motion and a second for approval. Ms. Clerk, please call roll.
Roll call. Haley. Davis.
Aye.
Stites. McKiernan.
Aye.
Burrows.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wait for staff to change around here just a little bit. Okay. All right, item number 3 is another action item. It's the sale of temporary notes and bonds. This is adoption of a resolution authorizing the sale of municipal general obligation temporary notes and general obligation bonds. There is a request to fast track this item to the December 7th commission committee. So we have 2 items that will be fast tracked so far. So with that, I'll recognize Debbie Johnson, our interim chief financial officer, for remarks.
Good evening, Debbie Johnson, Interim Chief Financial Officer. And I have a small presentation just to go over some of the numbers in the sale resolution. This resolution is authorizing the offering of sale of general obligation temporary notes and general obligation bonds. The previous action that was taken on the debt projects was the project authorizations that went to the commission meetings a few weeks ago. So just wanted to go over the numbers that we have in this sale resolution. The amount that's listed in the sale resolution for projects is 86.1 million. These are all projects that have been approved in the budget, and the project authorizations were included and approved a couple weeks ago. The revenue sources for these projects are city and county property tax revenues, as well as sewer and stormwater rate revenues. So just going over this first slide, just wanted to break it out. The first box there is the city and county tax levy projects totaling about 38.1 million. 31.4 million of that is for the city and 6.7 million is for the county. Projects funded by the enterprise funds and paid with sewer fund rates. We have the sewer sanitary fund has projects of about 46.6 million, and the stormwater fund of 1.3 million, totaling 47.9 million. This is just a reconciliation. I had showed this reconciliation in the previous presentation, but I wanted to take that and then go back to what we have listed in the sale resolution. So we started out with the authorization of all the projects that were listed and the total budget authority. That's in the table on the left-hand side. And then we have the sale authorization on the right-hand side. And you will see that project authorizations totaled 335 million. We took out 30.7 for previous bond issuances. 1 million is taken out for projects in 2024 that are not, they have reimbursement resolutions, but they are not receiving financing because the projects are not ready to go. Then we also had 129 million of unissued budget or payoffs of temporary notes that are not being issued. The 2024 amounts that are in the budget that are not being issued, as well as future fundings from 25 to 2028. When we do the project authorizations, we authorize the entire project cost, not just the current year, unless it's an annual project. So that's why you'll see, we've listed out the total authority, and then we're backing into the amount that we're including in the sale resolution. So the amount in the sale resolution is 86,165,000. And those projects are listed, all of those projects in the amounts are listed in the resolution that was included in your packet. And then we've broken down how those are being paid for by city, county, sanitary sewer, and stormwater funded projects. Next, so today we're requesting approval of the sale resolution to be approved by the full commission. We have asked that to be fast tracked because we are currently already working on that bond issue and needing to provide information to our bond counsel and financial advisors to get ready for the sale. We have the sale is going to be in February with the closing in March. However, at the end of January, we're scheduled to do credit rating agencies. We have to put out a notice of the sale. All of that goes in advance of the credit rating call. So that's why we're trying to get this completed so that we can finalize the amounts that we're issuing. So that's the end of my presentation with just a request to approve the sale resolution.
Committee, any questions? Any comments? Hey, and I'll ask the clerk if there are any comments received from the public.
No comments received.
Thank you. All recognized members of the public who wish to address the committee. Anybody? Clerk raising their hands?
No hands raised.
Or anybody in the audience who wishes to speak? So let the record show no one step forward. Thank you, Debbie. The one question, if I may, you said the credit rating will be determined in March.
No, the credit rating calls will happen at the end of January. Those have to be done about 2 weeks prior to going out for bid because the investors want to know what that rating is before they bid on our projects or on our bond issue. So we'll do the credit rating calls at the end of January.
Thank you for that clarification. Commissioner Davis.
Thank you, Chair. Debbie, thank you so much. This is really great work. Do we have an idea on the interest that we'll be paying on these bonds?
The interest rate, I believe this year we were, I think our interest rates were around 3 to 3.5%. Interest rates have been going up. I think on our investments, we're seeing around 4 to 5%. We could be looking at interest rates around that rate, maybe 4%. I don't think usually we get that information from once we finalize the amount, they'll do some projections probably in January, telling us kind of what they anticipate we might be paying. And then we usually compare that with obviously it can change from day to day. So.
Gotcha. So kind of 3 to 5% is kind of what I'm hearing roughly. Again, who knows?
Right.
What is going to come. Gotcha. And then just to, kind of for the public's education here and for mine, just as a reminder, we are merely giving staff the authorization to say, this is the max by which you can go out for bonds. If, for example, a grant came in or we found out that we can get materials or labor at a more affordable price, that would kind of encourage staff to go lower than this $86 million. Is that correct?
Right. This is the sale resolution is the numbers can change. Obviously, we cannot go over our full authority.
Sure.
This is what we expect to issue because we don't want to issue any more than we can spend in the next 12 months. Because otherwise, when you spend money and then if a project's not moving forward or it's not going to be paid until the following year, you run into the arbitrage rebate issue. So this is somewhat of our best estimate of what we expect. It would either be at this level, it will probably be lower than this. We're still doing finalizing to find out, if something's not going to be spent until the fourth quarter, is it the end of the year? We might opt to hold that until the next year, because we don't want to hold on to money for an entire year.
Thank you so much, Chair.
Great question. I think it's for sharing that the cost of doing business is going up, but at the same time, if we can apply for federal grants, city grant, state grants, whatever we can get to reduce that overall bonding and use cash, that's puts us in a better financial fiscal position. Great question. Hey, any other questions or comments? Debbie, thank you for that report. I would now, this is an actionable item to be fast tracked. I'd entertain a motion.
Dave's move to approve.
Kiernan, second.
We have a motion and a second for approval and to fast track. Clerk, please call roll.
Roll call, Haley, Davis, Stites, McKiernan,
Aye.
Burrows,
Aye.
motion carries.
Thank you, committee. This leads right into our next section this evening. In reference, we talked about debt. Now we're going to talk about our investment policy. So it's a great lead in, Commissioner Davis, and those questions that you had. So this is adoption. Item number 4 is our next item. That is the adoption of a resolution approving the cash management and investment policy. And I believe we have Andrea Vineyard, our deputy treasurer, that will lead us in comments tonight.
Good evening. Yes, Andrea Vineyard, Deputy Treasurer. I have brought forth what is the cash and investment policy. It is being brought to you every year as an annual required update. This will be in replace of what was adopted early this year on the 26th of January to go forward for 2024. A few key points why I'm here, obviously, as stated, the cash and investment policy is being brought forth as part of the annual review for purpose of the cash management committee that we do locally here at the UG. It sets up the documentation, policy, and procedure on how we handle and manipulate and manage the UG funds in our investment portfolio. Additionally, I use that document to go out for an application for the state of Kansas to have expanded powers. I'll go into that a little bit later in my slides, what that all is and what that entails. And this evening, only change we have is one minor little change to language, which I will show what that language change is and refer to the page for reference if necessary. Language change is going to be in section 10B under the ethics and conflict of interest, which is, I believe, on page 4 of the full investment in cash and investment policy. This comes from legal, there is a individual on our board that reviews this as well. We're changing the language from it said all state laws to now stating any applicable law. That way we can refer to our own policy outside of things like the state laws that we bring into our policy as well. So the full statement now reads, officers and employees are governed by the policy, the Unified Government Code of Ethics, and any applicable laws. That is the only change that we have from last year to this year on this policy.
Great.
Thank you. Just to kind of get you a little bit better understanding in general what this policy does. The purpose is obviously to be able to give us authority to manage and follow our own policies and related to how we handle the idle funds in all of our institutions, along with the portfolio for the UG. As cash manager, I manage this policy and I put it and bring it forth to our annual review with our cash management committee. There is a group of us that are at the local level here at the UG that are on the cash management committee. The following are the voting members: the chief financial officer, the clerk, director of revenue, treasurer, that's a double title, so I refer to county treasurer, and someone from chief counsel are all on our voting list. And we also have a few members that are non-voting members: the legislative auditor, the accounting manager, cash manager, and we also have a member of the municipal advisory that the UG uses on that board. So that entire board has gone through this document first before bringing it forth to you to review to make sure we're meeting all the needs there. A few other things we like to go over that I like to point out that are important about the policy. Obviously, they all are, but a few things that I look through pretty frequently, more quarterly, things like the diversification rule. We really want to make sure that we're allowing our portfolio to expand not only by institution,
but by type of instrument and maturity levels, giving us the authority to go from 1 year to 4 years, all local institutions, along with types of securities that we follow, like CDs, treasuries, agencies as well. Leading into the next one, local emphasis. It's within our policy that we are only allowed to go out for bid to local institutions who have a branch here in our county, Bonner Springs or Edwardsville. If none of them have interest, then we have a secondary rule to allow us to go out for bid at the Treasury federal level. Collateral is something that we really need to make sure we're watching. We want to keep ourselves covered for if an institution has something happen to them. We have a requirement that all institutions cover our investments at 105% or more. I monitor that every month, and I've been doing this for 6 years, so I can tell you we've thus far, knocking on wood, we have not had that problem, but it's there to protect us for that reason. And last but not least, one of the reasons I brought this today, each year the state of Kansas sends us an application, open for application or not, what's called the Expanded Investment Authority. Kansas state statute allows us to go out for bid for up to 2 years without this authority. Lately, we haven't really had a need to go out further than 2 years because of the way the investments are going. But things might be changing. Debbie and I speak with our outside counsel a lot, and it's probably best that we go ahead and apply for up to 4 years to allow us that opportunity. In the event that something comes up and we want to go out for a 3-year investment, if we don't get this approved and the application approved, we cannot do that. So I have not had to use it, but it's good to have it there in case we decide to go forward. Approving this document, putting that with our application makes that application for expanded powers whole. And that would be all that I have for you this evening as far as my presentation goes.
Committee, any questions? Andrea, I'd just like to state that I really like that putting the additional policy in up to 4 years to have it in case we need it, instead of trying to rush it through committee. At least we'll have a chance to learn what it means and have a discussion prior to having it thrown at us.
Right.
At a later date. So I do appreciate that proactive approach. And I went back into the policies and read them again.
Right.
As you know, I will.
Yep.
And on page 6, I did find the option to invest more than the 10 to 25% mandate that we have in there. We had talked about going above the 25% in investments because we had an audit that stated that we were needed to stay within the 25, but sometimes we may need to go past that if we're losing money.
Correct.
And this, I found that language in here and it's still in here again.
Yes.
I do sincerely appreciate that.
Yes. Sometimes the institution is the institution we get. And if we want to go out for bid, we would take that. We would just be prudent to do so. And we justify that in the language when we do the investment itself for audit purpose.
That's wonderful. I appreciate the thoroughness of what you presented this. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Committee, I will ask, this is an action item, but before I take a motion, I'll ask if there's any members of the public that wish to make comment. The record showed any raised hands.
No hands raised.
Anybody present would care to speak? The record show no one stepped forward. Committee, I'd entertain a motion.
Kiernan, move to approve as submitted.
Have a motion and a second. Clerk, please call roll.
Roll call. Haley. Davis. Stites. McKiernan.
Aye.
Burrows.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Committee, that takes us to the non-action item. It's for information only. And that is the 2023 third quarter investment report. That is going to be presented by Andrea again, Deputy Treasurer. And so, Andrea, it's all yours.
Thank you. Again, yes, Andrea Vineyard, Deputy Treasurer, bringing forth the third quarter investment report. Kind of what we all, or well, what we didn't do. Actually, there wasn't that much to do in quarter 3. I'll be back again with some change, but we'll go there then. So this is going to be July through September of 2023. Few key metrics. Last quarter, we were at 3.28% as far as the average yield. This one went down a little bit, went to 3.19% for our weighted average yield of the total portfolio. Some distance days to maturity did go up slightly by 2 days. Quarter 2 was 231 days. Quarter 3 was 233. Portfolio is a little more split, It's at 56% cash ending in September of 23, and in invested, we're at 44%. A little bit more about the interest and what really happened within the quarter. We always like to be below the benchmark for a T-bill. That's part of our policy. If you would have kind of read through what we do as far as where we're marking and matching our investments, we did again meet that by being below the T-bill bench rate of 5.48. To kind of refer to what Debbie is saying, is kind of where the rates are for that purpose of her presentation, where they're sitting for the treasury or the commercial side of percent. So you can see there is an average there as of Q3, something to refer to when looking through things. As far as interest shows, we're still leading towards hitting that exceeded amount for the Q3 of interest based on the investment portfolio we have. We got about 1.7 million in interest, which brings the total for all three to be right under 4 million as of Q3. We ended there last year in Q4, 2022. So that is a good representation of where the investments are sitting. As the COVID investments are starting to go away, falling off, we are seeing more interest coming in as the rates did increase after the COVID pandemic process. Where the portfolio shows as far as what we have out, obviously we were at the 56% cash. That's going to be sitting in our operating or the overnight repo. That's where the cash sits. Then we have two different institutions holding 26% of our portfolio, which comes to about 70 million. We've got 50 with Commerce, and UMB holds about 20 of that. And then the other 17% is going to be US Treasuries. Those are the investments that we could go out for bid because the investments that we were getting did not meet or exceed the rates we had to go for. So we did some local agencies through the federal level. So total in investments, we are at obviously 26 in CDs, and then we have 17% in the federal agency category. And last quarter, we didn't do anything. We've been watching the rates. I have a way to see those every day. We have outside counsel. We're able to watch. There was just not a lot to really go out. We had a lot of outgoing money for bond payments, so we left it alone. We'll have some changes come to you next quarter for Q4, along with the year-end update of where the portfolio sits, where the cash funds will all be based on each operating fund. And then we will present all of that at the year-end process. So Q4 will have some change, but Q3, we did not have any transactions. And that would be it for me.
Good news. Committee, any comments? Seeing none. I will ask if there's anybody that would like to, from the public, that would like to speak. Any hands?
No hands raised.
Anybody present care to speak to this item? Let the record show no one step forward. This was for information only. There's no action needed on this item. So thank you, ladies. Appreciate the thoroughness in which you went through an expeditious manner. I like the information coming ahead of time.
Yeah.
It makes it easier to read.
Thank you. Have a great evening, guys.
That takes us to item number 6. The blue sheeted item this evening. That's an ordinance and resolution. Moving for discussion is Community Benefits Fund. Ordinance creating a new Community Benefits Fund for monies received as fees paid by developers who are receiving economic development incentives submitted by Jeff Conway, Assistant Counsel. So Mr. Conway.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, my role is to try to put together the input by the members of the committee and Commissioner Johnson, Commissioner Davis that have been driving the bus on this issue. And so I think we've arrived at a final version for presentation tonight. And I could present some highlights. I could however you'd like to proceed. I would point out one thing that I think there was a version that was just distributed a couple days ago, and there's just been one minor change since then. And it goes to the language in C. Oh, sorry, in E as in egg. It's the last sentence. And so we just need a little bit more definition on the phrase with respect to distressed areas identified as qualified census tracts and identified by HUD and all of that thing. I think before it was a little bit questionable about exactly what was being referred to. So I wanted to use the right phrases there. So if you haven't seen that sentence yet, that's the only change from the previous versions you've seen. I could step through it if you'd like, or I'd certainly defer to Commissioners Johnson and Davis or whoever else would like to comment.
I think we'd first stab and do want to say though, before we get into this, I want to really appreciate Mr. Conway, who has proven himself to be most flexible and making accommodations to all of the various perspectives from the mayor's office to the commission, the task force. So thank you, Jeff, for all of your hard work. We really appreciate it.
Sure, thank you.
I'm going to give some high level and then I'll switch it over to Commissioner Davis. This really, I'm really happy to say the mayor had put together about 10 task forces at the beginning of his tenure to cover various areas from what we're dealing with in terms of economic development, but to the arts. I think some are working on the existing charter, things of that nature. We have, and I think what he ultimately wanted was for each of those task force to be able to bring forth some legislation or either change to policy that would be of benefit to the community at large. And that's what we've been attempting to do with this ordinance. When I think about over 20-something years ago, when we started doing the development out west, there was a basic promise of sorts that we would leverage the benefits of what we're doing out west to somehow be able to leverage that to the older eastern part of town. And we have not up to this point really had any legislation that really did that. I believe, it's my opinion, that this legislation, such as it is, begins that dialogue and puts in place a piece of legislation that addresses that very issue so that we can see some benefit as it relates to economics in our community. We have so many needs. If we have needs throughout the community, or particularly on the western side, you can multiply that because they become more complex as we move easterly. We have older types, older, things of that nature. And so what we have put together here attempts to address that. I believe, Jeff, this is at least the 12th, 13th iteration, which means that we have been listening. We have been listening to everybody that has input. And of course, you all gave us great input at our last meeting, Mr. Chair. And so what we have done is attempted to go back, address those issues and bring that forward. If it would please this group, I'd like to invite maybe one of the voice. I don't know if there's anybody from the mayor's staff that is here, but if you would allow them to come to the table, they can kind of speak to some of the things that we have said in the most recent meetings. If they're not here, that's fine. Okay.
You have JD Rios.
Okay, JD, if you don't mind, it's your pleasure. Thank you, Mr. Rios. I appreciate you being at the table. With that, I'll pitch it over to Mr. Davis. And I really want to appreciate Commissioner Davis because he has really taken the things that have been said and tried to massage them in such a way that gives us a piece of legislation that we think really can make a difference. So I'll pitch it over to Commissioner Davis. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you so much, Commissioner Johnson. As reiterated, this particular piece of legislation that y'all are looking at would not be here if it wasn't for the hard work of Commissioner Johnson and JD Rios and Levert Murray and Irene Cadillo. There's so many folks, Greg Kendall I see there. There's so many folks that are part of putting this together. And I want to reiterate that because we didn't just kind of write something. We really, really wanted to be aware of the wishes of everyone. So I'll give kind of a very basic overview of what this is before us. The community benefit ordinance basically sets up what's called an advisory board, community benefit advisory board, which, similar to all of our other boards, has members that each a person from the governing body we would all appoint. One of the changes that we heard in our last meeting last month was that the commissioners that appoint someone, that person needs to be within their district. It was also brought to our attention by folks from the mayor's office that we shouldn't just make it residential based. We should also add business owners, right? If you employ people in Wyandotte County, you also should be eligible to serve on this fund. On this board, excuse me. The second thing this ordinance establishes is a community benefit fund. It's great to talk about ideas and stuff, but the real question is, where does the money come from? As Commissioner Johnson most eloquently said, we are mindful that a lot of the projects that are being funded and are being produced come mainly from one side of town. There's nothing wrong with that in particular. That is how the cards have been set up. But we can do something about the revenue that comes in. And we can do something about how we distribute that revenue. And so that's where the second piece of this ordinance comes in. That board would be responsible for going out to the public, hearing concerns, and saying, hey, listen, we have this pot of money. This pot of money can be used to address those concerns. The funding for this board would be 25% of all economic development projects. That's a big deal, as you all can see, given the amount of money that has come through this board. And the reason why is we really want to go big. We don't want this particular fund to just be something that can do small things. We want to do big things. The last thing I'll bring you all's attention to is Section D, which is the categories of permitted expenditures. This, again, was a compromise, and I know Commissioner Burrows had some thoughts here. I know Mr. Murray had some thoughts here. And so initially last month, we had a huge list of a lot of problems and things that in Wyandotte County, I think all of us are passionate about and we hear about. However, we understand that to be effective, you do have to scale down so you can have a big impact. And so the three things that we scaled down to was senior minor home repair. We have a lot of seniors that are in need all throughout our county that may not have the funds or may not have the labor to complete whatever said projects. The second thing is a local affordable housing trust fund. You may hear this and be like, what? I didn't know we had one. We do not, but the work is put in place, and something I'm continuing to work on is that 2024 will be the year of establishing an affordable housing trust fund in Wyandotte County. And everybody, we're gonna need everybody's support on that. The last item for this one is licensed childcare projects. If you all recall, there's a group Raising WICO. I know Commissioner Kiernan was in on the summit that they had last year, but childcare is a massive issue in Wyandotte County and is a huge burden on our economy. There are a lot of folks that cannot access our economy because they need to figure out where childcare is affordable and accessible. And so those are the three programs that we hope to encourage and bolster and invest in, right? From our seniors, right, to our babies. And if you can take care of the seniors and the babies, you're going to be all right as a community. I want to hand it off to Mr. Rios just to talk about kind of what he's heard with the mayor's office, and then Chair, that will be it for my voice. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. JD Rios from the mayor's office. Emphasizing just a few points. One is that this is about all of our citizens, from the very young to our most senior. Very rarely do you have legislation that will cover the gamut of our citizenry, and this certainly does. It also allows for major impact. By lowering the categories, this should be something that the community taxpayers will be able to see very tangibly what their tax dollars are going toward. And that is something that I believe, and the mayor has stated that if the taxpayers see the tangible impact and effects of their tax dollars, they may not be quite as upset about the taxes that they pay. It's when they don't see the tangible impact that they get some frustration. Then we believe that this community benefits fund will in fact show very tangible impact to the three categories that have been recommended to you. I do, something that was stated in the last committee meeting that I want to be sure to address, and that is that this is like moving fast. I don't think 12 drafts of legislation can move fast. I don't think that you can be ignoring input from community, from committee members, from this body in a short period of time. I believe that this has been something that has been extensively discussed and has been modified to effectively bring about the input of all of those entities. And I am very proud of the fact that we're able to present such a piece of legislation to you that is inclusive of all of those entities coming together and being able to formulate something. And it also, I personally feel this is a better document for all of that. You know, from where we were, the first version to this current version is very different. But I believe that it is the best product of the work that has been put forth in this effort. It is the first piece of legislation to come out of the mayor's task force. That is, I think, something that should be celebrated by the commission. That again, having all parties coming together, that is the vision of the task force, is to have all entities working together to bring about constructive policy that addresses community need. And I believe that this effectively does so. If you have any specific questions, of course, any of us should be able to answer those. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Chair, before we go to questions, I do want to acknowledge Mr. Greg Kendall is here as well, and he's had a very, he's impacted this greatly as well from his perspective. We've also, and I'm sure there'll come time where he'll be allowed a time to speak either now or later. And then I also want to appreciate Ms. Johnsher for staying here. We've talked to her. We've also sat in the room with Mr. Johnston, our county administrator, one last time. So with that, we'll yield the floor for comment and discussion. Thank you, sir.
Commissioner McKiernan.
Thank you. Commissioner Davis and Johnson, thank you for your work on this. Let me just clarify one thing. The funding for this will come from fees paid in the process of economic development, correct?
Correct.
Funding from this will not come from property tax revenues received once the development is completed. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, I'll just add some clarity there. The new language that was given to us by the mayor's office, if you all recall, section C3, it says, to the extent permitted by state and local law, 1/4 of all funding or revenues received by the unified government as a result of any new development projects located in the city funded by utilizing economic incentives shall be set aside in the benefits fund. My reading on that would include some of the pilot payments on that. that may come from economic development.
Okay, so that is completely counter to my understanding of how this was going to be funded. My understanding of how this was going to be funded was that this would effectively be taking some of the fees that would come in as a function of bringing these projects to fruition. Taking ongoing property tax payments on any development is ultimately going to be a hurtful process, my opinion, and will negatively impact the provision of services that property tax revenues would otherwise provide, my opinion.
No, I,
So, if we can clarify that.
when you said property taxes, I forgot. I mean, I just misunderstood the word property taxes and pilot. They're the same thing. I apologize.
They are, we have conflated them to be the same thing, where a payment in lieu of tax is effectively a schedule by which we can offer some reduction of property tax as an incentive. But my understanding was that those monies would not be funding this fund. Rather, any fees pursuant to generating those projects would be doing this.
That was part of probably the 11th iteration that we had. It was from administrative fees. At some point, it was brought to us that we should consider that coming from all revenues related to these projects. Not sure where that came from. It started out at just in complete transparency that we ought to look at 50%. And we kind of waffled on that because we didn't know what that actually looked like. We've talked to Ms. Johnsher to get a better sense of what that would look like. And as a result of that, and quite frankly, in talking to the mayor and our county administrator, we settled in at 25% as a place to start. And the thought process is if it doesn't work, we can modify it at the pleasure of the commission. So that's how we got to this point.
Okay, thank you. I will say that was not my understanding of how this was going to be funded. And I'm not prepared to offer support if that is in fact the way it's going to be funded.
We have Levert Murray.
Thank you, Commissioner. Just to clarify, and it is my understanding, like yours, Commissioner McKiernan, that the question of pilot supported projects came about, and in terms of how do you qualify that project for seeking funding for the Community Benefits Fund, not to continue to receive part of those pilot payments. And so let's say if you are initiating a project and that project is to be funded through industrial revenue bonds, where there is a pilot schedule, et cetera, that there would be a fee assessed to that project, not to take part of the pilot payments. So that fee would be paid up front. Now, that's my understanding, paid by the developer up front for that pilot supported project. And then you wouldn't receive, now, again, that's my understanding, part of the pilot payments moving forward, that you pay that payment up front as part of your initial project cost.
Okay,
Now-
perfect. So my understanding then would be that this would be a project, let's say where IRBs were going to be in play.
Right.
And as a part of the total project, there would be IRBs. There would also be a payment in lieu of tax for the property tax.
Right.
And that the payment in lieu of tax for property taxes would be untouched and would continue to come to the general fund as always, but that a portion of the issuance fee for the IRBs may in fact then go into this fund and
community
support
benefit.
this fund.
Yes,
If that's the case, I'm on board.
that is my understanding of how it's to work.
Thank you.
Commissioner Stites.
Legal, is that your understanding?
Well, I can tighten up the language to reflect fee only if that's the,
Of issuance fee.
I can,
I don't want to lose control. I want everybody to have an opportunity to speak.
So if, it sounds like there may be somebody, because he's bouncing off of his
Yeah.
chair. I'll let him speak and then maybe that resolves it.
I think it's possible to hone in on the intent.
Commissioner Davis, and would you speak up just a little?
Yeah, for sure. Well, before we do that, Commissioner McKiernan, you brought up a good point again. Our original intent was just the issuance fees and the administrative fees. That's what we brought to you all. What we were brought here, kind of, it was not necessarily what we had wanted. But again, we wanted to have the discussion. Ms. Johncher, I know there's been some conversation on what the impact will be. Can you talk about if this were to go in, this 25%, we'll talk about issuance fees in a bit, but what would be the budgetary impact in your estimate?
The budgetary impact would be, and I guess maybe this is, I probably need to be a little more clear too. When I estimated, what we did was we went back and looked at, because my understanding was going to be all revenues, which would include those pilot payments. So what I did was I went back and looked at pilot payments. These would be ones that were on a reduced schedule. Usually they're 10 years. The issuance fees with those IRBs, as well as administrative fees that we do on other economic development projects that maybe don't have an IRB, maybe it's a CID, something we're tracking pay as you go. We take an admin fee of about 1% on the payments that we do for those. So I included all of that. I included the admin fees, the issuance fees, and the pilot tax payments. And I came up with an estimate of 25%, it would be about 102,000. Now, if you take out those pilot payments, you're probably looking at the total amount of fees. What we did was we looked at several years and then we took an average because it fluctuates from year to year depending on how many developments you have come in, or what the payback schedules are. So looking at just the issuance fee and the admin fees, it would be probably about 150,000, and then 25% of that would be what, 1/4 of 150
Is that per year?
per year.
Per year that you're looking at? Gotcha.
If we had I think I said if I had taken including the pilot, it was going to be around 102,000 per year.
Well, if it pleases the committee, I know that we're still having conversation, but I would be more than happy to approving this with the stipulation that we go back to the half of all admin and issuance fees as opposed to the 1/4. I'll put that kind of on the table. It's not necessarily a motion. I don't want to stop a conversation, but the original ordinance draft that we had proposed last month just said half of all administrative and/or issuance fees for economic development.
And I agree with that.
So I just want to make sure that we fully understand what's being discussed here. So did that address your concern, Commissioner McKiernan, that you raised your question?
Thank you, Sherry. I believe it does, because my understanding of this from the beginning was that this was going to be funded from issuance and administrative fees, and that any ongoing property taxes would go to the general fund, as always, for the provision of city and county services. And so this fund would be seeded from the issuance and administrative fees. And if that is the case, then I am perfectly okay with that. So I thank you for that clarification.
Commissioner Stites.
So, thank you. So we're bouncing from 1/4 to 1/2, right? How are we just on the fly, just going from 1/4 to 1/2?
Do you want to go ahead, Commissioner? No, Commissioner Davis, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. So the reason why, so it's not 1/4 and a half of the same thing. 1/4 of all revenue from an economic development project is different from half of a 1% issuance fee or an administrative fee.
So what would that amount be? What would half of the
Issuance fees.
half of the 1% issue?
It's about 80,000.
Okay, so before, if we were at that 1/4% or 1/4, 1/4, we would be
And it was a $0.25%,
$5,000, right?
right,
Because it's 25% of one.
of all, yeah. It's a quarter, it was, yeah.
Money, nothing. I mean, it'd take forever for us to have enough money in there to do anything. Right? So at $80,000 a year, I mean, it'll take a few years, but we'll have substantial money in there to make improvements in the area that we're talking. Got it. All right, I'm on board.
Commissioners, is that what you understood?
Absolutely. Yeah, when in the iteration, somewhere it got lost in translation. And so I said, well, we'll bring it to the committee and see what they say.
And Mr. Conway, you have the intent of the legislation to be able to make the changes necessary?
I do, Mr. Chairman, and I just wanted to make sure that there aren't any other revenue sources that we haven't touched, because we talked about the fees, we've talked about pilot, I don't know if there's any other possible revenue sources.
So the two changes that we're proposing is from a quarter to half. And then the other one is the NICS code. Is that the federal?
I think so.
It's quarter.
Of
Quarter and a half of
funds.
the admin fees.
Right. Yeah. But I don't want to misspeak on the other portion we talked about earlier that you said might need some clarification, or is it clarified in this document, the census tract? Is that by NICS code?
No, I think I just need to probably get with Debbie and make sure that we're identifying the fees specifically that she's talking about. I want to use the right language.
Right, yeah. What I was referring to was just the admin fees and the issuance fees that we receive when we do an IRB or another special type of economic development where we're tracking the information versus, I think my original number included the pilot payments, so.
Mr. Stipes?
Last question. Now, I want to be clear that this is any development in KCK, right? That has this, an admin fee or, the half would apply to that, right?
That's correct.
Any new development going forward
Going
was my
going
understanding.
Forward in KCK.
Yes.
Yes.
And all that we're doing is going back to the original language, which said half of the funding received from the unified government from issuance administrative fees. That's what that was in the original. And through some communication, there was a change. I'm sorry, I don't know exact individual or what that came from. So then I knew that the commissioners wanted the committee to have the discussion and make the conclusion. And the mayor's office is quite happy with whichever way the committee goes.
Any other discussion? The committee. Hey,
I didn't know we're still with the funding source. I was gonna shift. Mr. Chair, I don't know if it was still looking at the funding and where that's derived. I wanted to shift to the other side to those outlined organizations or the recipients. So I don't know, if you're still on the, the prospect of where we're deriving the funding, we can stay with that. But once those are satisfied, I'd like to, that other side.
Mr. Haley, I'm having a very tough time hearing you. I've got a voice behind me that really takes away from.
Okay, I understand the acoustics being what they are. All right. Still with the funding, if you're still on that, but if you're moving, I have other questions about another aspect of the agreement.
Okay, thank you. Hold on just one second. I'll ask the committee's intent. I believe that there was consensus here that we've got that bit of language resolved so that staff can go back and make that change. If that's not right, please let me know. Okay. Mr. Haley, please.
Okay, thank you. And I appreciate the clarity that was given, Mr. Chair, for the funding that's been worked out. So in the previous iteration of this of the ordinance, there were outlined many different, there were about 10 or so, if I remember correctly, categories for expenditures to various entities. And this before us now is abbreviated to, it looks like 3 with some ancillary, and that's at section D, 1, it says 1, 3, and 3. That's a typo, but it should be 1, 2, and 3. But then there's some other direction given in the precedent paragraph as to, I think, who else would be considered. So I guess my question is simply this: after some rework from the 10 that were here a few weeks ago, that it's now been more, for lack of a better word, consolidated to embrace those 3 identified, which are major areas. But are we still, with the additional language, are we still embracing, I think, what are some other good categories that were on previously but are not now?
I think if I can attempt to first stab at that, we've gone back and forth on this issue. In talking with our county administrator, he said the best way to proceed with this would be to have just a small section of ways and places that you could send the funding. And that if that doesn't work, then we can always come back and review it. I think we have a 2-year review period. Subsequent conversations then, as we talked about having so many iterations and trying to hear as many voices as possible, sometimes that's good, sometimes not so good. But the list was expanded. And again, when we began to reevaluate this, and I think particular to our last conversation with this group, with the ED&F Standing Committee, I think the tenor that I understood, that Commissioner Davis and I understood, was that it's better be more concise. And so we have taken that again, presented it in more concise manner, again, with the understanding that there is going to be a review period on this, whereby we'll be able to expand it, modify it, or whatever, with the approval of, first of all, standing committee, and then also the full commission. So that's kind of a summative statement of how we've gotten to this point.
And Mr. Chair, Commissioner Johnson, thank you for that clarity. And I don't have what that list was, and I know this has been an ongoing work in process. And I do appreciate the opening comments, how comprehensive, both from the needs to care for our child care needs as well as our seniors. Those 2 have made the cut from the 10 to now the 3, and then the affordable housing. And I wish I could remember at least 1 or 2 others, because there were some attractive in that 10. And I do appreciate that you have to, we didn't want it to be unwieldy, but there were some other, I thought, extremely appropriate areas that were addressed in the previous consideration. And I don't want to see them thrown out while the trial to run only these 3 crucial categories might be addressed, when there might be some other areas that are wanting as well.
I don't know that they'll be thrown out. I think, that entire list, I thought every one of them was worthy. As they were brought up, in the persons, whomever they brought it up, we all said, this is worthy. In fact, we had language that said not limited to, so that it was even more diverse, even beyond that. For the sake of this conversation, I think what we heard in terms of the tenor of this conversation is we don't need to be so broad in our perspective, but let's start out with a more confined list and then evaluate as to whether or not we can expand. And so again, all the items that were on there were worthy of consideration, but this is where we've come to this point.
I won't labor it. I thank you. And I know some of them were unwieldy. I remember the last one, the number 10, was, I thought, very difficult. It was talking about senior tax relief or something along that line, which I felt could be a little problematic with everyone needing tax relief. there are some other areas, and then I certainly hope that this will not be exhaustive should the ordinance
Right.
pass, and I certainly am supportive of it. I hope it will. And that there's some kind of way to open up the discussion again for, I wish I could throw something out, but I don't even remember the categories.
I
But
leave it to the
anyway,
discretion of the
so,
committee.
okay, all right.
To the discretion of the committee.
And so I thank you, Commissioner Johnson and Commissioner Davis, Mr. Chair, for helping me to better understand that. I didn't know if you had anything, Mr. Rios, to add to the consolidation or the abbreviation of those as well than what Commissioner Johnson has shared.
The only thing that I would share is that when you think about the amount of dollars that was just told us, in one way, it's a nice sum, and another way to get a major impact on any one of those areas will call for a lot more than what will be garnered from the fees outlined here. And so it was, I think the narrowing was an attempt, okay, let's just get a focus. Let's see over the 2-year period, money's generated, where they go, what that impact really will be. And then the community advisory standing committee can make recommendation to the commission as to how that is playing out. Really, I think was the bottom line to it.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, so it's my understanding, Commissioner Stites, it's my understanding, and I appreciate that we've taken this broad brush that was out there and narrowed it down to this trim brush now, if you will, that we can get that. We're never going to get a snowman built if we don't start rolling the snow with the base, right? This is starting the snowball, right? We haven't had any discussions regarding this ever. Now we are, and we're starting the process. I don't care if it's one area, 2 areas, or 3 or 20, right? If they're going to be vetted, and I'm glad that, because we couldn't possibly in the what was trying to be done was to get this moving, get the ball rolling. And we were kind of under some time constraints. As we know, there's commissioners that are leaving that wanted to see this, if you will, their baby through, right? And I respect that, and I get that, and it makes sense to me. They worked hard on it, and they deserve the credit for that, because it is something that good that's for our community. But to think that there's not other programs that are going to come through that aren't that we can't look at would be just irresponsible of to think that this is the only 3 that will ever come about. So I am totally fine with the way it is right now. I support it, and Chair, I don't know if you're looking for a motion, but I'm ready to make it.
Well, before we go to a motion, I do have to ask if there's any members.
All right.
I want to do this properly. Thank you. If there's no other questions, I will ask the clerk if there are any comments received from the public.
No comments received.
Thank you. I'll now recognize members of the public who wish to address the committee. I'll ask the clerk if there are any hands raised by the public who wish to speak.
No hands online.
Hands online. Thank you. I will ask if there's anyone in the audience present who would wish to speak. If you do, you will be given 3 minutes to make your comments. Please state your name and city of residence for the record, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Lisa Walker Yeager, and I wanted to just tell you guys, thank you, thank you, thank you. You heard us. You heard us. And so I am thanking you, Commissioner Davis, Commissioner Johnson, you Stites, everyone, for basically hearing our plight. I know there's not a lot of money there. I do see that there's some things as the community. I would ask that you just add that word youth, not just childcare, but youth programs added to that, because we spent $22 million on the jail cell over here for our youth, where we can utilize some money for our youth programs because that they are our future. The other only thing is that I was looking at is some of the funding of where we can redirect from the infrastructure monies, and it's stated not just for bridges, but it's stated for water and it's stated for electrical. So that is where we can get that grant money and utilize that. And my next thing was, Senator, don't forget, I'm with you on the elderly for the taxes on, the taxes, but we can fight that through the state. We can fight that. You could put a bill and propose that for the state. So let's not forget that. So, but I am supporting this and I thank you, but we can look at how to get that money from the infrastructure and start doing the application. And I would like to be placed on the board because I know there's y'all had 1.7 million worth of interest coming back off the monies that she just stated earlier. And that 1.7 million, that was the interest. Some money can even come from there. I don't know what y'all utilizing that money for.
1 minute remaining.
We really need this program, and if we can get some money in that pot would be awesome. Thank you.
Greg Kendall with Wyandotte Economic Development Council and a resident of Kansas City, Kansas. I just wanted to thank the commissioners who led this discussion. There was a lot of passion. What you have before you after 11 different versions doesn't include all of the scratching and discussion, but in an incredibly professional way. And so I want to thank the whole team and the task forces that were lobbying us on the outside as well to try to come up with something that is before you. And it won't stay this way, right? This is not intended to be a static document. I think we all came to the conclusion that this is a dynamic policy. I do think that moving it back to the 50% of all of those fees is probably the model that was originally presented by the task force. That could be extended, in my opinion. I would also be looking at land disturbance fees and other fees that the unified government issue. Those are not necessarily on the table today. I'm just saying that if this is not enough money, if we want to keep finding new ways to drive more money into that fund in time, there are other fees that are issued by the unified government that could potentially be on the table outside of talking about the property taxes. And so I think this is the right direction. I think it sets the tone. I think the region as a whole will look at this as well to see that the unified government is coming up with a process that didn't increase taxes. So that was one of our requirements, is that we could not increase the fees on projects. We could increase it as a tax on projects because we didn't want to make it more difficult to do development in Wyandotte County, which was one of the areas that I was most focused on. And so I appreciate the mayor's team as well as the commissioners and those who were involved in working within those parameters, because it was certainly not easy work for sure. And anyway, I just wanted to say that we are supportive of this as it is presently before you. Thank you.
Commissioner, we do have Elnora Jefferson with her hand raised.
Person online.
Yes.
Okay.
Ms. Jefferson?
Thank you very much. Good evening, commissioners. Elnora Jefferson, Kansas City, Kansas. The question that I have, and I've understood the conversation about narrowing the recommended items that were 10 or 11 to the 3. I understand that. But one of the items that I was particularly interested in was one was advanced by the mayor's office, and that had to do with the prevention of foreclosure, or to help against that. Is that, while not an item identified in itself, is that voted into the housing trust fund, that for prevention of foreclosure?
Ms. Jefferson, Commissioner Burrows, if that's your only question at this time, I would ask that you pose all your questions and I'll go to the conferee who I believe can answer that question for you.
Yes, sir. That's my only question.
Great. Thank you so very much for your input. Commissioner Davis.
Thank you, Ms. Jefferson. Thank you, Chair. That's a really, really good question. So the fun part about where we are with this process is, while we have identified kind of a process and a board and some funding, there's still a lot of work to be done on what those childcare projects will look like, and particularly what the local housing, what the local affordable housing trust fund will look like. I am working on that with Churches United for Justice, and yes, that item, helping folks that are under foreclosure, has been discussed. It is my hope that there will be real language for the elected body to consider sometime in the spring. And of course, the public will be more than engaged on that issue as well. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, any other questions?
No other hands raised.
Committee, thank you for your input. Thank you for the dialogue. Mayor's office, much appreciated. This is an actionable item. It is, I'd entertain a motion, and the motion, if it's still the wish of this body, to fast track it, it needs to be in the motion.
Awesome. Okay, well, clerk, you're ready. Okay. I move to fast track and improve this item with the stipulation that all funding will come from half of all administrative and or issuance fees.
Second. I was looking right at him because I just want to honor you. I second. Now, point of order. Mr. Conway, you did get the motion, correct? And did you make the motion to fast track that in the motion?
Yes, that was at the beginning.
Wanted to make sure you did. Okay, but we do have a motion and a second. Clerk, please call roll.
Roll call, Haley, Davis,
Aye.
Stites, McKiernan, Burrows. Motion carries.
Thank you, committee. Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That takes us to the end of our work on the Economic Development Finance Committee. And with that comes the conclusion. So I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
Kieran, move to adjourn.
Davis, second.
Clerk, please call roll.
Roll call, Haley, Davis, Stites, McKiernan, Burrows. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Let's take 5 minutes for transition, and we'll convene neighborhood and community development at 6:35.
Well, yeah, there's no perfect document, but during that 2 years.
Okay. We will move forward toward our next committee meeting. I can find there we go. So before I call this meeting of the Neighborhood and Community Development Standing Committee to order, I want to announce that in addition to committee members who are here on site, some staff and some of the public are attending remotely via Zoom. All participants who are joining us remotely by Zoom or by telephone should mute their devices when not speaking to avoid background noise. During the meeting, we do ask that everyone please make sure you announce yourself by name and title every time you speak so that those who are observing and are remote know who is speaking. This is critical given the number of remote participants. The public is allowed to participate either by submitting written documentation ahead of this meeting, or by participating by Zoom during this meeting, or by participating here in the fifth floor conference room during this meeting. With that said, we'd like to welcome everyone to this meeting of the Neighborhood and Community Development Standing Committee. I'd ask the clerk to please call roll.
Roll call. Bynum. Here. Stites. Davis.
Here.
Townsend. Burrows. McKiernan.
Here. Thank you very much. Let's see, pull back here. To the best of my knowledge, there were no revisions to this agenda as initially published.
That is correct.
Correct. And we have no previous minutes to approve this evening. So we'll get right into the committee agenda. Item number 1, the only item with multiple sub-items is land bank options. And I'll turn this over to our land bank manager, Mr. Judd Knapp.
Good morning, commissioners. Good afternoon.
Wow.
I've been here too
Time
long
warp.
today.
Could you pull that microphone just a fraction closer to you? Thank you.
Yes. All right. For tonight, we got 8 homes and 14 multifamily units that we're going to go through. I think we can lump A1 through A8 together as one, and then go to B1 and B2, and then B3 and B4. I think that's what I'm going to try to do, but always, if you have questions, you can stop me. All right. The first one, A1, is at 3427 North 71st Street. I believe this is the 3rd time we've seen this lot here. And all times it's been canceled, but then I have another applicant that is coming right behind it. So last month they got canceled because the applicant found out how expensive it was to build. So that's why that one got removed. So this one came available and it got taken very quickly. Staff didn't have any comments. The neighborhood groups didn't have any comments. Good. A2, items A2 through A5 are the same person. They're requesting to build 5 homes on 6 lots. They do have 20 years of building experience, so they are experienced builders. Staff comments with these next 5 were they need a design change due to the narrow lot design guidelines, because it's going to be more of a bungalow type of house with like a raised front porch. And then staff wants to try to maintain the 25-foot lots in this neighborhood. And that will support density and to match the neighborhood. So the first one's at 907 Tenney. There's actually 3 lots under this. So this is where the 125-foot lot comment comes from. Staff would like to see those split up into 3 and build 3 homes on that lot, because that's a 75-foot lot. A3 is at 263 North 9th Street, so it's just north of the last address, and there's 3 lots there. The applicant wants to build 2 homes there, but staff said they would love 3. A4 is 253 North 9th Street. And then A5 has a little different, the narrow lot design guidelines do not apply to this lot because all the lots around it are all different sizes. And this a home built here would match the neighborhood on whatever size lot that is. Next is A6 is a continuation from last meeting that we had with Mount Carmel. They initially requested 15 lots that we approved last month, but we missed these 4 parcels in there. They're planning to replat into a cul-de-sac, and they need those 4 lots to make that cul-de-sac work. This would bring their total up to 19 lots to build 10 homes. A7 and A8 were held from last month's meeting. I do have comments for A7 through A8, and they're both the same for both houses. A7 is here, A8 is right across the street. They are not the same person, but it's kind of like the same. They aren't the same names, but they aren't the same person, but it's like the same group. It's just like another person's doing it. That's why the homes look the same, but the comments that we received from the Oak Grove neighborhood group was that the Oak Grove supports A7 and A8 on a conditional basis. I want to read this note to you. Both received a unanimous vote, and to answer the question, would you like to see this in your neighborhood? So like, would you like to see a single family home in your neighborhood? The neighborhood group said yes. They also had some like conditions with it. They said, while both projects have look appeal in an area that has been dormant for several years, many of these voters saw the lack of African ethnicity as a serious drawback. Internship, training, as well as job employment activities were absent. Elk Grove wants more homeowners. It was not determined how much time the developer would give to the seeking owners, so before seeking renters. With the existing sizable population of renters in the neighborhood, goods and services are virtually absent. Oak Grove believes that it is not solely the number of rooftops, it's also the number of disposable income that reside in these homes. That was their comments. So that concludes items A1 through A8.
Thank you, Mr. Knapp. In a moment, I'll ask Eddie if there are any comments or questions, but I'm just going to share something. And this is my last meeting, so you won't have to put up with this from me from now on. But at first I was wondering, why are A2, 3, 4, and 5 all split up? It's the same applicant. Why isn't it all just lumped together? Now I see why. Because at A2, no, split that. I personally do not see that a 25-foot lot, I'll rephrase that. I personally believe that if an applicant wants to take two 25-foot lots and combine them into 50, or wants to take 3 and make them into 37 and a halves or whatever they are, I do not have a problem with that. I mean, we're sitting here saying, no, you have to build on a 25-foot front lot, but go back to the ones on North Halleck, would you please? The last ones you presented, like 2529 North Halleck. That's a 75-foot front. So why aren't we telling that applicant split that into 3 25s? I think there is an inequity in how we're proceeding here that, and frankly, this North Halleck property is only a few miles due north of the North 9th Street properties that the previous applicant wants that we're kind of messing with. So I'm fine if we say do it, but I just think that there is inequity in this process. And I think that a firm commitment to force 25-foot front construction is misguided and will ultimately result in fewer homes being constructed in our downtown area. That's just my opinion. So, yeah, members of the committee have comments or questions. Commissioner Burrows.
Thank you. Commissioner McKiernan, I don't disagree with those statements. My concern would be if we have a whole block of 25-foot lots, what do we plat them to be moving forward? I'm with you. 25-foot lot, if it's going to build narrow shotgun homes that aren't connected, that with some of the past practices that have been done with demolition, makes it even more difficult in which to deal with these lots. So I don't disagree with you. I would hope that whoever's working on land bank policies would take me to be thinking about this and taking this into consideration, that as we discuss these, that we may want to look at combining a minimum of 2, no more than 3. There may be a way to do that. There's nothing wrong with building a larger home in a community, because if we're going to build shotgun homes, it's going to take the quality of home that I see there is not conducive what I would consider to a neighborhood of a block full of 25-foot lots. And I would just soon, if we're going to invest in our neighborhoods and reinvest in our neighborhoods, that we see housing stock that comes back that could be there for a couple of generations.
I would agree with that. And I would also speculate, I don't know, because I don't build houses, but I would guess that people who build houses would have a sense for what size lot, what size house is going to be marketable. And that my opinion again is we should not stand in the way of that effectively free market. So Commissioner Stites.
That's where I was going. We can't have cookie cutter houses. Right? And the market is telling us what we need. One of them said, and I can't remember what it was there, they're targeting under $300,000 houses, right? Well, you know what? If those aren't going to sell, I'm not saying the 300,000. I'm saying if a house that is built this size is not going to sell, we aren't in that business. Our job is to get those out of land bank and get them back on the tax roll, right? That's our job. Not to say that we know better, because heaven knows that we do enough of that, thinking that we know better than some of the professionals. But I 100% agree that having that ability to, and like Commissioner Burrow said, 25, maybe up to, but I still don't want to make that policy. I still think if one comes in and it's whatever the distance may be, we still have that ability to one off. So I agree.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Commissioner Davis.
I will say, as you all can guess, I've been working on a lot of things. The land bank stuff is still being worked on with the mayor's office, and the hope is, I know Commissioner McKiernan, you won't be with us, but the hope is in 2024 we will have something that has kind of the mayor's blessing for this group to consider. Thank you.
Now, I will say, despite my biases, I'm not going to stand in the way of any of these applications. If these applicants know our restrictions and choose to still go forward, then I wish them Godspeed and good luck. But I would hope that we would have a more coherent and more uniform and potentially more equitable land bank policy moving forward. Any other comments or questions? And Monica, I did not get my Zoom window up here, so I'll be asking you if we have anybody online. So first of all, in terms of public comment, did we receive any written comment regarding any one of the items A1 through A8?
No comments received.
Thank you. Is there anyone online who would like to comment on applications A1 through A8?
No hands are raised.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone here present with us who'd like to comment on A1 through A8? I see no one coming forward. So these items are available for motion.
A second.
There's a motion and a second to approve these applications for option as submitted. Roll call, please.
Roll call. Bynum. Stites. Davis. Burrows. McKiernan.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Mr. Knapp.
Okay, that brings us to item A9. A9 was also in last month's standing committee meeting, but and it was sent back with the stipulation that they need to have a public meeting about the transitional houses. That meeting has not happened, so I'm requesting that this item be held until that meeting takes place.
And was this the item, Mr. Knapp, where the group that the developer was supposed to meet with is going to meet like the next day and there was no time to coordinate a meeting, something like that?
No, that was the last two applications.
Okay, that was the other, and they have done that.
Yes, they have.
But this applicant did promise that there would be such a meeting that has not yet happened.
Yes, Commissioner.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask for any public comment, but Mr. Knapp is suggesting that we hold this one item, these three properties over until such time as the meeting has been held. So, Monica, did we receive any written communication regarding A9?
No comments received.
I'd ask if there's anybody joining us online who has their hand raised to make comment on A9.
No hands raised.
Thank you. So committee A9 is before us with a recommendation that we hold it over until such time as a public meeting has been held. Commissioner Stites?
Say hold it over until that, how long is that? I mean, is it 30 days? Are we gonna see this again in 30 days if they don't have the meeting? And then we have to say this same thing again, and we just kick the can down again. Hey, you know what? They didn't do what they said they were gonna do from last meeting. I'm okay with this application being thrown away and they can reapply.
Have to have these items in like, is it 4 or 5 weeks in advance? So when that last meeting happened, there wasn't much time to have that. And I think it was a shorter meeting month. I think it happened. So I will not put it back on the agenda until that public meeting has happened.
But that is a great point because we were second Monday last month, we're first Monday this month. And so we did have a compressed time in between meetings.
But what I want to make sure of is that might not happen this month. It might not happen next month. And then it's kind of off the books for anybody else to put in a request for that property because it's not another application can't come forward because it's been kicked down the road. So I mean, I'm okay with doing it. I mean, but you're saying they won't come back before us until they have this meeting. We don't know when that meeting is. I want to say that if they don't have the meeting within 2 more months, right? 60 days, then that application is null and void.
That sounds great to me.
So we have a motion that this item be held over for a maximum of 60 days. And then I'm reading body language here and facial expressions, and I think we're going to get a little bit of clarification from legal in just a second. It's just a hunch. And so basically what we're asking is maximum of 60 days. And if that public meeting has not yet occurred by that time, that this be denied. Wendy?
The only thing is, per our own ordinances, item can only be held over a maximum of 30 days.
Right.
So it can only be held over to the next standing committee meeting unless maybe somebody would want to suspend a rule. That's correct.
Monica, could you tell us, or do you have the next meeting? When is our January meeting? Is it the second Monday, in which case we'd have 5 weeks?
I can tell you, and it will be January 8th.
So it will be the second Monday, although jammed right up against the holiday.
Right.
So, Mr. Murray, I'll recognize you for any clarifying comments. Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Bynum at Large District 1. My question is going to Commissioner Steitz's. What precedent, what policy exists around making a statement that if we hold it 30 days and they don't have the meeting as requested, then we can trash can it? I mean, how does that comport with the way that we've handled other applications? All I'm asking is for consistency and what the policy currently might be.
So technically, it's still a motion to hold it over, though. So
But he added a stipulation to his motion. He added a condition.
he did, but
And I'm asking how that
correct.
that creates consistency.
So the motion itself, though, is to hold it over, and then if they don't do what they're supposed to do, then it's just denied in essence, and we won't hear it again. So the initial motion, though, is that it be held over. And then if they don't do what they do, then it gets denied. So you have to deal with that initial part of the motion, which is to hold it over. And our rules say it can only be held over 30 days.
And I just want to make one more comment
Mhm.
to this point. Again, I'm looking for policy, and secondarily, it's December, it's Christmas. The next meeting is the 8th. It's, I think, going to be difficult at this time of year for them to have a community meeting between now and January 8th, just an opinion. The second part of that question is, were we asking them to meet with a specific neighborhood group? Or were we asking them to hold some sort of public meeting? Those aren't the same thing.
Well, and I would, just to be contrarian here, I would say that we don't necessarily have to mandate a meeting or any application. We certainly don't mandate meetings. I mean, there is in policy, but Mr. Knapp, who was the meeting to be with?
It was with the neighborhood and surrounding areas, was I heard. They, the Village Initiative did have this meeting for their last approval. They had a community meeting at an area church. So I assumed it was going to be the exact same meeting again.
So then the request for the meeting here is because it's village initiative, not because it's a land bank application. Would that interpretation be correct?
It seems like that's what it is, if you ask me, Commissioner.
Okay. Now, Mr. Murray, I'll go ahead and Commissioner Sykes will be back with you in a second, but I'll recognize Mr. Murray for some clarification.
And and thank you, Commissioner. And this is pretty much in line with the concern cited by Commissioner Bynum. But I think we all know that the Village Initiative is already under construction just around the corner from them with housing similar to what is proposed. And so I just met with Randy George a week or so ago, and I would suggest that maybe he didn't understand that we're waiting, no offense, Jed, that we're waiting on him to have this meeting before this matter comes back. And so I think in the meantime, you'll certainly get his attention. And be it the concerned citizens of Quindaro or the Quindaro Initiative, he'll meet with the surrounding groups. But I guarantee you, he's not one to want these properties to go away because he had to seek funding for this. And I think it was just some oversight on his part. I know for the development that he's pursuing as we speak, that he's under construction with, it was suggested to him to meet with the neighbors at that time and the community groups, and he did. I don't know what he might be confused by, but I can assure you that he will respond if given adequate time.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Appreciate that. Commissioner Stites, did you, okay, so that,
So what I'll say though is I'll withdraw the motion, but I want to be clear about something also is we have to suspend the rules because you've said that we can only send it back once, right?
No, you can send it back multiple times. You could only hold it over for 30 days at a time. Correct. But you could do it multiple times.
All right, gotcha.
so with all of that clarified, is there a motion on item A9? Commissioner Davis.
I'll just, let me put two and two together. Village Initiative, they're the applicant. They do have a history within this community and connection within this community. So I want us to be very mindful of that, not to play favorites here, but there's a difference, right? This is a local organization. Mr. Knapp, if you can help me, it was the Village Initiative that said they would have the meeting, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and they just weren't able to do it. Granted, holidays, schedule's crazy. I think even 30 days, that gives January 4th. That's wild. I'll move to approve.
That being said, I'll agree and I'll second that.
So we have a motion and a second to approve A9 as submitted. And I cannot remember, have I asked for public comment on this? I have not. All right. So Monica, did we receive any correspondence related to A9?
No comments received.
Is there anyone joining us online who'd like to comment on item A9?
No hands are raised.
And there's no one here in the room, or I should say, is there anyone here in the room who would like to offer comment on A9? I see no one coming forward. There's been a motion and a second to approve as submitted. Roll call, please.
Roll call, Bynum, Stites, Davis,
Aye.
Burrows, McKiernan.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Mr. Knapp, we're now into the B group.
Yes, we're in the multifamily area now. B1 is at 1600 Rosedale Drive. This is for a duplex. It does match the zoning of R2 here. This item received no comments from staff and no neighborhood group comments. B2 is at 1929 Stewart Avenue. This is zoned R2, so it meets the zoning of a duplex. A little bit about the applicant. They're in the construction trade and they're looking to build a house that will suit their needs. And they're also going to live in one side of it and rent out the other side of the duplex. 3 was held over from last month. They did have a they did have a neighborhood group meeting. I do have the neighborhood group comments right here. Says Oak Grove Executive Committee opposes this application. There's a high concentration, approximately 15 apartments and 4 rental houses in this 8-block area. The number of single-family homes is considerably less. The neighborhood group doubts that more of the same will attract goods and services that the area badly needs. Random shootings are the norm. Much of the infrastructure, sidewalks and curbs is absent. Either it never existed or it was uprooted or removed by companies and entities doing work in the right of ways. The nearest transportation is 5 blocks away. Great consideration and components of the equitable development reference the anti-displacement strategy in the Northeast area, KCK Heritage Trail Plan should be given not only to increase density, but to equally in part improve this area's quality of life and attractiveness to those with disposable income and those with investment dollars. So that was the comments I received from the neighborhood group here. They are against the application. Now B4 was also held and it's also in the Oak Grove neighborhood group and I got comments for them. Oak Grove Executive Committee support this application with conditions. I have to remind you that this is a multifamily 4-unit build that the applicant is requesting. The conditions for being supported by the neighborhood group was no 4plexes or multifamily units. The neighborhood wants more owner-occupied single-family structures. I take this as it means that they don't want multifamily, they want single-family homes. And I do have to say this area is already zoned RP5, so it would match the zoning of this area. The developer would actively seek and include workers and trainees of ethnicities that represent the demographic that are most negatively affected by redlining and other adverse government actions and legislation. The developer would partner with the neighborhood group and NBR to work within the framework of the anti-displacement strategy. That concludes my items, commissioners.
Comments or questions from the committee on these applications? Commissioner Bynum.
Or as B4, B630 Quindaro, I appreciate the neighborhood group actively, looking at these applications. The question really is, though, the conditions are not really part of this stage of the process, correct? It's currently zoned. Now, as we move through, we might reach a point where this were to be in front of planning, although possibly not. I'm a little confused, I guess, on the ability of Neighborhood and Community Development Standing Committee to place these kinds of conditions on a land bank transfer. I'm just a little confused, and I keep looking straight at legal. And is our planning staff online? Okay, so whoever wants to take it.
Wendy Green from legal, first and foremost, that's normally not what this standing committee does at all with an option agreement. Normally an option agreement is granted and then it is determined whether or not anything further is needed. So just from a legal perspective, no, that's not what we do at this point.
We do have Kelly McLaughlin online.
Turn it off. Ms. McLaughlin, if you have any information for Commissioner Bynum, go ahead.
Hi, so if they decide to do is just single family, then they would have to go through the narrow lot design guidelines as part of that process. But if they do want to do anything that's three units or more, so I guess single family and duplex is narrow lot, 3 units or more would fall into the commercial category. So we would require a final development plan to be presented before the planning commission, in which point they would have to, they would be open for public comment, which seems to be maybe a better spot to put those neighborhood opinions and commentary.
Thank you so much. Any other comments or questions from the committee?
This is Wendy Green with legal. I do remember there was a question the last month. They had a question about the TIF for the Peregrine Falcon and when it was going to expire. And I did have an answer for that. It should expire in July of 2025.
That doesn't apply to any of these, does it? I thought it would
That was-
apply to A7 and A8.
Actually, it would apply to B3 and B4 as well, I thought, but possibly not. Maybe I wrote my notes in the wrong place.
Oh, it's
But anyway, if anybody wanted to know, it expires in 2025.
it's perfectly possible. I could, first time I've been wrong today.
A7.
I did write my
yeah.
notes in the wrong place. I
The
apologize.
North Halleck properties were the ones that were in the Peregrine Falcon, weren't they? Yeah. Okay. So committee. Getting whooped by a map here. Does the committee have any comments, questions, or a motion on any of these applications?
If I could,
Mr. Murray, come on up to the microphone, please.
well, and thank you, Commissioner. And I just wanted to clarify some things because I indicated to that the North Halleck property is in the Peregrine Falcon area. But I believe if it is on and I should have looked at the map, if it's on the north side of Quindaro, the 630, 628, 626 Quindaro projects would be in the Peregrine Falcon area as well.
Ah, okay. Thank you. That's correct. Yeah, those are on the north side of Quindaro at roughly 7th. Commissioner Davis.
Just question for legal, and I don't know if we've had this conversation to this extent. Could we even mandate for example, could we mandate that a land bank application be only owner occupied? Is that something we're even allowed to do?
This is Wendy Green with legal. Land bank properties are ours to do with
as what, for whatever our policy says. So if we want to make that part of our policy that we can mandate, whoever purchases it, make it owner occupied, then we could do that, but we don't have anything in our policy as of right now that says that that we can mandate that, or that we can't mandate that, to tell you the honest truth.
And there's nothing in state law that would prohibit us from doing so?
No, not necessarily, because the land bank, even though it's quasi-governmental, it's its own entity. So it's almost acting, it's acting in a quasi-governmental function. So, although I can't think of anything, I mean, as long as we're not violating fair housing laws, I don't know that there's any reason that we couldn't, I mean, I don't know that saying something has to be owner occupied necessarily I would have to look into that, but I don't, off the top of my head, I can't think of why saying something has to be owner occupied would necessarily violate a fair housing law, but that's what we would need to make sure that we don't run afoul of, are the fair housing laws.
Mr. Burrows, you have home rule authority
Mhm.
to do these types of things granted by law. But if it's state federal housing authority, and that would be the only thing I think that we would have to run. Other than that, whatever decisions we need to do under home rule workplaces.
As attractive as that might be, I would caution us that I think that's a slippery slope that we would potentially down the road be at cross purposes with previous decisions that this body has made, but again, I won't be making them. So Commissioner Stites.
How long has this property been in?
I don't have a good answer for that one. I can find.
Would it be safe to say it's been more than a few years?
Definitely, yeah.
Would be safe to say. So how many, single family housing applications have we had in that last couple of years?
And we have like 450 total.
No.
No.
For this property.
Oh, none. This is the first time this property
There's
just
a
came.
lot of opportunity for anybody that wanted to build a single family house in there. They could have came forward and built one, right?
Yes, Commissioner.
Okay. All right. Tights, motion to approve as submitted.
Dave's second.
Monica, you'll have to check me again. I've forgotten whether or not we checked to see. We have not. All right. Was there any public comment, correspondence received related to items B1 through B4?
No comments received.
Is there anyone joining us online who'd like to comment on B1 through B4?
Yes, Miss Eleanor Jefferson has her hand raised.
Thank you. Ms. Jefferson, if you'd go ahead and just give us your name and city of residence for the record, and then you'll have 3 minutes to make your comments.
Okay, thank you very much, Commissioner McCarron. My name is Eleanor Jefferson, and I live in Kansas City, Kansas. And I'm part of the Oak Grove neighborhood. And I'd like to say that, yes, that is correct, that TIF does extend to Quindaro Boulevard. The other question that I raised at the last month was the developer agreement, that there was a developer agreement of record. And we've not, I don't have any information, or maybe I should say, I'd like to know where I could get the information as to whether or not the developer agreement is still active. Because one big thing was that the developer had the right of refusal in this particular area. I'd like to say that we enjoyed our meeting with this particular applicant. He was willing to work with and enthusiastic and anxious to work with the neighborhood group. So I hope that this will, and it looks like it will go forward. On the question I have is on the application over on Roland, will that too require a second meeting?
And I think that question would best be answered by Ms. McLaughlin, but based on my interpretation of her previous comments, it sounds as if it might. Ms. McLaughlin, do you have any insight on B3, the properties on Roland?
I'm sorry, Jed, can you go back to that so I can take a look at that one more time?
Yes, Kelly, I'm back on it right now. It's the 3 duplex location.
So those are zoned R2B, which means that they're allowed by right to have a duplex. The only difference is that they still have to go through the narrow lot design guidelines, and there might be some changes to what you see in that picture. I also noticed that the plat or that the lots they have are a little smaller. So if they want to change how their plats are done and they want to change the spacing on them, so whether 3 even lots, that would require a planning entitlement. So that would be a subdivision replat in order to do so, which may result in a public hearing if they pursue that. If they don't pursue that avenue and they just want to do a building permit for 3 single-family homes or 3 duplexes, I'm sorry, they are allowed to do so by right.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. And then, Mr. Murray, do you have any additional insight on these properties?
Thank you, Commissioner. In fact, Ms. McLaughlin just covered that, although I was going to point out that with regard to the comments made earlier about reserving the land bank parcels for single family use only, that would have, and I was going to point out that would have zoning implications that I agree with legal counsel that you can do that, but just understand the impacts it would have to our zoning ordinance.
Thank you so much, Mr. Murray. Appreciate that. We have a motion and a second, but I'll recognize Commissioner Bynum and then Commissioner Stites.
Thank you. I'm just trying to get clarity and maybe you stay there too. Ms. Jefferson mentioned right of refusal in that TIF area, but these are in the land bank. So changes I mean, how would there be a first right of refusal on a property that's been foreclosed and placed in the land bank? So, yeah.
And can I address that? I don't want to get
Go
in
ahead.
front of anyone, but and Judd will recall conversations he and I have had about some of the parcels in the land bank, and what prompted some of those discussions was an application for property in the Mount Carmel area. Many of these parcels in the Peregrine Falcon and the Mount Carmel area, and there are other redevelopment areas that were approved, and there were contracts on, with developers covering these areas. At that time, and I'm talking more than 10 years ago, we placed a number of these parcels acquired for the developer in the land bank. For what reason? Well, number one, they were not ready at the time to develop those specific parcels. And thus we were trying to give them time to get their plans ready, but avoid taxation on those parcels in the interim. Now, as you know, when there is land, you have to tax that land unless it's serving a government purpose and this or a public purpose. And in this instance, the purpose was for redevelopment. And the fact that they were being held for redevelopment, the only way to escape taxation was to put them in the land bank. And that's why you will find a number of parcels in redevelopment areas in the land bank. And so they weren't acquired via a tax foreclosure sale. They were acquired actually by, in the case of Mount Carmel, there were a number of parcels that were condemned, or not condemned, but acquired via eminent domain. And the same for Peregrine Falcon, and then placed in the land bank, hoping that the developer could live up with the terms of their redevelopment agreement and get them built out. As you know, I need not point out that there was a pandemic that slowed some things, and then there was an economic turndown that hurt other things. But that's why you'll find a number of parcels in the land bank.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. There is a motion and a second to approve as submitted. Any other comments from the committee? Roll call, please.
Roll call, Bynum.
Aye.
Stites. Davis. Burrows. McKiernan.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. That takes us to the end of our agenda. There are no more items. Is there a motion to adjourn? Mr. Burrows.
Thank you. Brian, my friend, I just want to say it's been a pleasure serving with you on this committee. You have served as its chairman since I have been on this committee, and your wisdom and knowledge in reference to community housing is going to be sorely missed. But I just wanted you to know that I respect the work that you bring to the committee and your thought process and how you conduct yourself as a member of this committee. And I just want to say thank you, and your professionalism will be missed.
Thank you, Commissioner Burrows. I appreciate that. I have no doubt that this committee will carry on and do even better work moving forward. So is there a motion to adjourn?
No, sir, I need to make a comment.
Oh.
Well, I can't let Commissioner Burrows. It could, because I have a very long speech prepared. I just want to echo Commissioner Burrows' comments, and we'll have more time for this in the coming days, but just in general, this committee and all the other work you've done, so appreciated. You are going to be missed dearly. And a lot of it is for just the way you think about things and analyze things. And I like to call it McKiernaning. And part of that references this spreadsheet creation and the pie chart creation and all the ways that you take the data. And you've certainly helped me over these years understand that data better, and it's so appreciated, and it won't be replaced. We have fine people coming, but what you've done won't be replaced, and it will be missed, and I thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate that. Commissioner Davis.
I'll just add, although I'll save the full length of my speech for Thursday. But no, Commissioner McKiernan, you've really modeled public service very, very well. And it is always refreshing to hear you speak and hear you analyze issues and problems. I think you've brought a level of clarity to a lot of really hard to understand topics and things. And so I appreciate your candor, appreciate your wisdom, and I appreciate your sacrifice. I know there's a lot of other things on your plate. And so things that this community has, we have little to no idea. And so thank you for your service to this community.
Let's not overlook the value and the power of all the other members of the committee.
This
here.
is your time to receive appreciation,
You
Chair.
are doing great work, and that will continue. Okay, now, is there a motion?
Well, no. So I knew this was gonna happen tonight, so I prepared notes that I'd like to go over. And thank you about. I've worked with you now for 2 years. I've known you for many years prior to this, and it does not surprise me at all. As I was your community policing officer, you conduct yourself the same exact way as you did as a member of my district that I represented as community policing. You are going to be missed, and I echo exactly what everyone has said here. I can't add anything to that other than I'm going to miss you, and
I'm gonna still be around. Don't worry.
we'll make a motion to adjourn.
There is a motion to adjourn.
Wait a
Is there a second?
second.
There is a motion and a second to adjourn. Roll call, please.
Roll call, Bynum. Stites. Davis. Burrows. McKiernan.
Aye.
Motion carries. We're adjourned.